The sun was setting over Pine Ridge, painting the sky with streaks of orange and pink. The small town, nestled between rolling hills and dense forests, was quiet as usual. People were finishing their day-closing shops, walking dogs, or sitting on porches sipping coffee. Among them was Daniel Carter, a man in his late 30s who spent most nights staring at the stars through an old telescope set up in his backyard. Tonight, though, something unusual caught his eye. Daniel adjusted the lens of his telescope, focusing on a bright streak moving across the darkening sky. It wasn't like any shooting star he had ever seen before. This object was larger, faster, and seemed to leave behind a faint green glow. He watched it for a moment, puzzled, until it suddenly veered downward and disappeared behind the distant mountains. His heart raced as he tried to make sense of what he had just witnessed. Word about the strange sighting spread quickly around Pine Ridge. Neighbors gathered outside, pointing toward the horizon and exchanging theories. Some thought it might have been a meteorite, while others joked about UFOs. But when reports began flooding in from other parts of the country and eventually the world, it became clear that this was no ordinary event. Whatever it wasn't natural. Over the next few days, news outlets were filled with stories of similar sightings. Footage showed objects descending from the sky in various locations, leaving trails of light before vanishing into remote areas. Governments scrambled to investigate, sending teams to search crash sites. However, instead of finding debris or wreckage, they discovered something far more unsettling. Aliens, these beings, later identified as the Veilith, were unlike anything anyone could have imagined. They stood taller than humans, with sleek silver bodies covered in intricate patterns that shimmered like liquid metal. Their eyes glowed faintly, and their movements were eerily smooth, almost hypnotic. At first, many hoped these visitors came in peace. That hope didn't last long. The Veilith revealed themselves not through words, but through actions. Within hours of their arrival, entire cities fell under their control without a single shot being fired. People reported feeling overwhelmed by sudden waves of fear or confusion, unable to resist commands whispered directly into their minds. Those who tried to fight back found themselves paralyzed, trapped within their own thoughts. The invaders didn't use weapons. They used psychic powers so advanced that humanity's greatest defenses were rendered useless. Among those watching the chaos unfold was Emily Dawson, a young woman living alone in a modest apartment on the outskirts of Pine Ridge. She had lost her vision years ago due to an accident, but she refused to let it define her. With the help of her guide dog, Max, and a sharp mind honed by years of navigating the world without sight, Emily led an independent life. Still, she couldn't ignore the growing unease gripping the town, or the fact that everyone around her seemed terrified. Her younger brother, Jake Dawson, stopped by one evening after hearing rumors about the Veilith. A mechanic by trade, Jake was practical and level-headed, though his protective instincts often got the better of him. "You okay?" he asked, leaning against the doorway of Emily's kitchen as she prepared dinner. "I'm fine," Emily replied calmly, chopping vegetables with practiced ease. "But I can tell you're worried." Jake sighed, running a hand through his short brown hair. "It's everywhere. People are saying the aliens can mess with your head, like they can control what you think or feel. Everyone's scared out of their minds." Emily paused, turning her head slightly as if listening to something only she could hear. Then she smiled faintly. "Well, maybe we don't have to be. What do you mean?" Jake frowned, stepping closer. "Think about it," Emily said, placing the knife down and facing him. "If these aliens rely on messing with people's minds, how would they deal with someone who doesn't see the way they expect? Someone like me?" Jake stared at her, realization dawning slowly. "You mean because you're blind?" "Exactly." Emily nodded, her voice steady. "Their powers won't work on me. And if they won't work on me, then maybe I can figure out a way to stop them." At first, Jake dismissed the idea as too dangerous. But as the days passed and the situation worsened, he couldn't shake off Emily's words. Reports poured in about entire neighborhoods surrendering to the Veilith without a fight, their inhabitants reduced to obedient shells. Meanwhile, resistance efforts led by sighted individuals ended in failure, crushed by the aliens' overwhelming mental dominance. Determined to act, Emily reached out to other blind individuals in the area, explaining her theory and asking for their help. Many were hesitant at first, unsure if they could make a difference against such powerful foes. But some, like Maria Lopez and Samuel Grant, agreed to join her cause. Maria was a former teacher who had lost her sight due to illness. Despite her gentle demeanor, she possessed a fierce determination to protect her students, many of whom now lived in constant fear. Samuel, on the other hand, was a retired soldier who had been blinded during combat. His military background made him invaluable when it came to strategy and discipline. Together, they formed a small group dedicated to fighting back. Using whatever resources they could gather, they began experimenting with ways to counter the Veilith's abilities. One of their earliest discoveries involved sound. High-pitched frequencies emitted from modified devices disrupted the aliens' focus, causing them to stagger momentarily. Reflective surfaces also proved effective, confusing the Veilith's perception and forcing them to retreat. As their confidence grew, so did their ambitions. Late one night, Emily led the group on their first mission, a covert operation to sabotage a Veilith patrol near the edge of town. Armed with makeshift tools and unwavering resolve, they moved silently through the shadows, guided by Emily's acute sense of hearing and spatial awareness. When they encountered the patrol, they unleashed a barrage of noise and flashes, disorienting the aliens long enough to escape unscathed. News of their success traveled fast among the blind community. More people came forward, eager to contribute. Lavra Bennett, a tech-savvy college student, offered her expertise in modifying gadgets to suit their needs. Kevin Myers, a local journalist skeptical of official narratives, documented their efforts, sharing updates through underground networks to avoid detection. With each passing day, the resistance grew stronger, while the rest of the world struggled. Under the weight of the Veilith's oppression, the blind fighters of Pine Ridge stood as a beacon of hope. For the first time since the invasion began, humanity dared to believe that victory might still be possible, even if it came from the most unexpected place of all. And so, amidst fear and uncertainty, a new chapter unfolded. Led by Emily Dawson and her companions, the blind humans of Pine Ridge prepared to take on the greatest challenge they had ever faced. Little did they know, their journey was only beginning. The resistance was growing, but it wasn't easy. Emily Dawson and her team knew they were fighting something far beyond anything humanity had ever faced. The Veilith were powerful, their psychic abilities almost godlike in comparison to human limitations. Yet the blind fighters of Pine Ridge had one advantage: the aliens' powers relied on sight, and without it, their control crumbled. Emily spent long hours strategizing with Jake, Maria, Samuel, Lavara, and Kevin. They gathered in a small, abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town, turning it into their makeshift headquarters. The space was cluttered with tools, gadgets, and maps pinned to the walls. Lavra worked tirelessly at a rickety table, surrounded by wires, batteries, and pieces of scrap metal. Her hands moved quickly as she assembled devices designed to disrupt the Veilith's senses. "We need to think differently," Emily said one evening, pacing back and forth. Max, her loyal guide dog, lay quietly near her feet. "They're used to controlling people who see them, people who rely on their eyes. We don't have that weakness, so we need to use it against them." Jake nodded, leaning against the wall. "But how?" "They've already taken over most of the towns around here. It's not like we can just march up to them and fight." "We start small," Emily replied firmly. "Hit-and-run tactics. Disrupt their patrols, sabotage their equipment. Show them we're not afraid," Samuel chimed in, his deep voice steady. "I agree, but we also need to spread the word. There are other blind communities out there. If we can get them involved, we'll have a real chance." Maria smiled faintly, folding her arms. "And we'll need more than just blind people. Some sighted folks might be willing to help too. Not everyone has given up hope." That night, the group finalized their plan. They would reach out to other blind individuals across the country, explaining their immunity to the Veilith's powers and encouraging them to join the fight. At the same time, they would recruit sighted allies who could assist in ways the blind couldn't, like driving vehicles or handling tasks that required vision. Kevin took charge of spreading the message. Using old-school methods like radio broadcasts and coded messages hidden in online forums, he reached out to anyone willing to listen. His reports painted a vivid picture of the Resistance's efforts, inspiring others to take action. Slowly, but surely, responses began trickling in. Blind individuals from cities and rural areas alike expressed interest in joining the cause. Even some sighted civilians, desperate to reclaim their freedom, offered their support. Lavra continued refining her inventions, creating tools tailored to the Resistance's unique needs. One of her creations was a handheld device that emitted high-frequency sounds capable of disorienting the Veilith. Another was a reflective shield made from polished metal scraps, designed to confuse the aliens' perception when aimed directly at them. She taught the group how to use these gadgets effectively, ensuring everyone was prepared for battle. Their first major operation came sooner than expected. A Veilith patrol had been spotted near the edge of town, patrolling the streets and enforcing curfews. Emily decided it was time to test their strategies on a larger scale. Gathering the team, she outlined the plan, split into pairs, approach the patrol from different directions, and strike quickly before retreating. The night of the operation was tense. The air felt heavy, charged with anticipation. Emily led one pair alongside Jake, while Maria and Samuel formed another. Lavra stayed behind to monitor communications, ready to provide updates if anything went wrong. Kevin tagged along with Emily's group, determined to document the mission despite the danger. As they moved through the darkened streets, Emily relied on her heightened senses to guide them. She could hear the faint hum of the Veilith's movements long before they came into view. "They're close," she whispered, signaling for the group to stop. "Get ready." When they finally encountered the patrol, everything happened fast. Emily raised her reflective shield, aiming it toward the nearest alien. The creature hesitated, its glowing eyes flickering as it struggled to focus. Jake activated his sound emitter, filling the air with a piercing screech that sent the Veilith stumbling backward. "Now!" Emily shouted, throwing a smoke bomb to cover their retreat. The team scattered, disappearing into the shadows before the aliens could regain their composure. Back at the warehouse, they regrouped, adrenaline still coursing through their veins. Kevin grinned, clutching his notebook. "That was incredible. Did you see how confused they got? For a moment, they didn't know what hit them." "It's a start," Emily said, though her expression remained serious. "But we can't celebrate yet. This was just a patrol. If we want to make a real difference, we'll have to hit something bigger." Her words proved prophetic. Over the next few weeks, the Resistance launched several more attacks, targeting supply lines, communication hubs, and smaller Veilith outposts. Each success boosted morale, drawing more recruits to their cause. Blind fighters traveled from neighboring states to join the effort, bringing with them fresh ideas and unwavering determination. Sighted allies played crucial roles too, helping with logistics, gathering intelligence, and providing backup during missions. Despite their growing numbers, challenges remained. The Veilith weren't stupid. They adapted quickly to the Resistance's tactics. Patrols became more frequent, and their movements less predictable. Alien enforcers, larger, more aggressive versions of the standard Veilith, began appearing in greater numbers, tasked with hunting down troublemakers. One evening, after a particularly grueling mission, the group sat together in the warehouse, exhausted but unwilling to give up. Maria broke the silence, her voice soft but resolute. "We're making progress, but it's not enough. We're slowing them down, sure, but we're not stopping them." "She's right," Samuel added. "If we keep playing defense, they'll eventually crush us. We need to go on the offensive." Emily nodded thoughtfully. "There's only one way to do that. We need to find their main base, the place where they're coordinating everything. If we can hit them there, we might stand a chance." The room fell quiet as everyone considered the implications. Attacking the Valeth central hub would be risky, possibly suicidal. But it was also their best shot at turning the tide. Lavra spoke up, her tone cautious but determined. If we're going to do this, we'll need more than just guts. We'll need detailed plans, better weapons, and a lot of luck. And we'll need to work fast, Jake said grimly. The longer we wait, the stronger they'll get. Over. The following days, the group threw themselves into preparation. Lavra worked around the clock, upgrading their gadgets and designing new tools specifically for the mission. Kevin used his connections to gather information about potential locations of the Valeth's main base. Meanwhile, Emily trained the fighters, drilling them on stealth techniques and combat maneuvers. Finally, after weeks of planning, they received a breakthrough. A sight-alone courier, a young woman named Clara, arrived at the warehouse with critical intel. She had overheard Valeth commanders discussing their operations and managed to escape undetected. According to her, the alien Central Command was located deep within the mountains, hidden inside a massive underground structure. This is it, Emily said, studying the crude map Clara had drawn. This is where we strike. The decision was unanimous. The resistance would launch an all-out assault on the Valeth stronghold, knowing full well it might cost them everything. But as they prepared for the mission, a sense of purpose settled over the group. They weren't just fighting for themselves. They were fighting for every person living under the shadow of fear. For Emily, the stakes were personal. She thought about the countless lives disrupted by the invasion, the families torn apart, the dreams shattered. She remembered the look of despair on people's faces when they realized they couldn't resist the Valeth's control. And she vowed to change that. We're not just blind humans, she told the group the night before the attack. We're survivors, we're fighters. And tomorrow we show the world what happens when you underestimate us. No one slept that night. Instead, they checked their gear, rehearsed their roles, and shared quiet moments of camaraderie. By dawn, they were ready. As the sun rose over Pine Ridge, casting golden light across the landscape, the resistance set out for the mountains, their hearts filled with hope and determination. What awaited them was uncertain. But one thing was clear: the blind humans of Pine Ridge were no longer victims. They were warriors, united by a shared goal to obliterate the psychic aliens and reclaim their freedom. The journey to the mountains was long and grueling. The resistance moved in small groups, sticking to narrow paths and dense forests to avoid detection. Emily led the way, her cane tapping rhythmically against the rocky ground as Max stayed close by her side. Despite her blindness, she navigated with remarkable precision, relying on sound, touch, and an uncanny sense of direction. Behind her, Jake carried a backpack filled with supplies, while Maria and Samuel kept watch for any signs of trouble. The air grew colder as they climbed higher, the trees thinning out until only bare rock remained. Lavra had equipped everyone with thermal clothing and compact gadgets designed to mask their presence. Kevin walked quietly among them, scribbling notes whenever he could, though his hands trembled slightly from both exhaustion and nerves. None of them spoke much. The weight of what lay ahead pressed heavily on their minds. After hours of hiking, they reached the base of the mountain where Clara's map indicated the Valeth stronghold was hidden. From there, the terrain became even more treacherous: steep cliffs, jagged rocks, and icy winds that cut through their layers of clothing. But the group pressed on, driven by the knowledge that turning back wasn't an option. As they approached the entrance to the alien facility, Emily signaled for everyone to stop. She knelt down, running her fingers over the cold stone surface. "There's something here," she whispered. "A seam like a door." Jake examined it closely, brushing away dirt and debris until faint lines appeared, glowing faintly green. "It's some kind of mechanism," he said. "But how do we open it?" Lavra stepped forward, pulling out a device she had been working on for weeks, a small tool capable of emitting electromagnetic pulses. "Let me try this," she said, attaching wires to the glowing lines. With a deep breath, she activated the device. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a low hum, the ground beneath them shifted, and the massive stone door slid open. Inside, the air was damp and metallic, carrying an eerie silence that made the hairs on their necks stand up. The corridor stretched ahead, dimly lit by pulsating green lights embedded in the walls. Emily took the lead again, her senses heightened as she listened for any movement. Behind her, the others followed cautiously. Weapons at the ready, they hadn't gone far when they encountered their first obstacle. A pair of Valeth guards standing motionless near a control panel. Their silvery bodies shimmered faintly in the strange light, and their glowing eyes scanned the area methodically. Emily raised a hand, signaling for the group to hold position. "We need to distract them," she murmured. "If we can draw their attention away, we might be able to slip." Maria nodded, stepping forward. She pulled out one of Laura's high-frequency emitters, aiming it toward the ceiling. When she activated it, a sharp, piercing noise filled the corridor. The Valeth guards flinched, their heads snapping upward as they tried to locate the source of the disturbance. Taking advantage of the confusion, Emily guided the group past them, moving quickly but silently, deeper into the facility. They discovered horrifying truths about the Valeth. Through observation and eavesdropping on alien communications, they learned that the invaders weren't just conquering Earth, they were feeding off its population. The Valeth siphoned energy directly from human brainwaves, using it to sustain themselves and maintain their psychic dominance. Entire rooms were filled with people slumped over in chairs, their eyes vacant, their minds trapped in endless loops of fear and despair. Emily felt sick as she realized the full extent of the aliens' cruelty. "They're not just controlling us," she said quietly. "They're draining us, killing us slowly." Her words hardened the group's resolve. They couldn't let this continue. Every second counted now, not just for their mission, but for the countless lives hanging in the balance. Their next challenge came in the form of a large chamber filled with alien machinery. Lavra examined the equipment closely, her brow furrowed in concentration. "This is it," she said finally. "This is how they project their mind control waves. If we disable this, we can disrupt their entire operation." "But how?" Jake asked, looking around nervously. The hum of the machines was deafening, and the green glow cast unsettling shadows across the room. "I'll need time," Lavra replied, pulling tools from her bag. "And I'll need cover. If they catch me messing with this, we're done." Without hesitation, the others formed a defensive perimeter around her. Emily positioned herself near the doorway, listening intently for approaching footsteps. Maria and Samuel stood ready with reflective shields and sound emitters, prepared to fend off any attackers. Kevin crouched nearby, filming everything with a small camera he had brought along. Minutes ticked by agonizingly slowly as Lavra worked. Her hands moved swiftly, rewiring circuits and disabling key components. Just as she finished, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed down the corridor. "They're coming," Emily warned, gripping her cane tightly. The Valeth burst into the room moments later, their glowing eyes locking onto the intruders. Maria and Samuel sprang into action, activating their devices. High-pitched screeches reverberated through the chamber, causing the aliens to stagger. Emily hurled a smoke bomb, filling the air with thick gray clouds that obscured their vision, or rather, their perception. "Go!" she shouted, leading the group toward the exit. Lavra stumbled after them, clutching her tools. Behind them, the machinery sparked and crackled, sending shockwaves through the facility. Outside, chaos erupted. Alarms blared throughout the complex, and red lights flashed wildly. The resistance split into smaller teams, each heading for different sections of the base to maximize their impact. Emily and Jake led one group deeper into the heart of the facility, searching for the central core, the source of the Valeth's power. Along the way, they faced relentless opposition. Alien enforcers ambushed them at every turn, their psychic abilities stronger than those of the regular Valeth. But the blind fighters held their ground, using their immunity to outmaneuver their opponents. Emily proved especially resourceful, her keen hearing allowing her to anticipate attacks before they came. Finally, after what felt like hours, they reached the core chamber. It was a vast, cavernous space dominated by a towering structure pulsing with green energy. At its center floated the Valeth Commander, a massive, grotesque version of the standard aliens. Its body shimmered with molten-like patterns, and its eyes burned with an intensity that seemed almost tangible. Emily froze for a moment, overwhelmed by the sheer presence of the creature, but then she reminded herself why she was here. "We can do this," she muttered under her breath. "We have to." The battle that followed was intense. The commander unleashed wave after wave of psychic energy, forcing the group to rely on their gadgets and quick reflexes to survive. Jake planted explosives around the chamber, setting timers to detonate once they escaped. Meanwhile, Emily confronted the commander directly, using her echolocation skills to dodge its attacks and strike back with whatever she could find. In the end, it was Emily who delivered the final blow. Spotting a weak point in the commander's armor, she hurled a makeshift weapon, a piece of broken metal, straight into the exposed area. The creature let out an ear-splitting shriek before collapsing, its body dissolving into a pool of liquid. "Silver, move!" Jake yelled, grabbing Emily's arm and pulling her toward the exit. The explosives detonated seconds later, shaking the entire facility. Debris rained down as the group sprinted for safety, narrowly escaping the collapsing structure. When they emerged into the cold mountain air, they were battered but alive. Behind them, the Valeth stronghold crumbled, its green glow fading into darkness. Exhausted but triumphant, the resistance regrouped, their faces lit with a mixture of relief and disbelief. They had done it. Against all odds, they had struck a devastating blow to the Valeth. But as they began their descent back to Pine Ridge, Emily knew the fight wasn't over yet. The aliens wouldn't give up so easily, and humanity still had a long road to recovery ahead. Still, for the first time in months, hope burned brightly within her. The blind humans of Pine Ridge had proven that even the most underestimated among them could change the course of history, and they weren't about to stop now. The resistance returned to Pine Ridge, battered but victorious. News of their success spread quickly, reaching other blind communities and inspiring them to take action. People who had once felt powerless now saw a glimmer of hope. Emily, Jake, Maria, Samuel, Lavar, and Kevin became symbols of courage. Their names whispered with admiration, but the Valeth weren't defeated yet. Though their stronghold had been destroyed, remnants of their forces still roamed the earth. The aliens retaliated fiercely, targeting the resistance leaders directly. Patrols grew more aggressive, and alien enforcers hunted tirelessly for any sign of rebellion. One evening, as Emily and her team regrouped in the warehouse, a sudden explosion rocked the building. Flames licked at the walls, and smoke filled the air. "They found us!" Jake shouted, grabbing Emily's arm and pulling her toward the exit. Max barked wildly, his sharp instincts sensing danger. The group barely escaped, fleeing into the night as the warehouse collapsed behind them. They took refuge in an old barn on the outskirts of town, their faces streaked with soot and exhaustion. "We can't stay here," Maria said, her voice trembling. "They'll keep coming until they find us," Emily nodded, her mind racing. "We need to scatter. If we stay together, we're too easy to track." It was a painful decision, but necessary. The resistance split into smaller groups, each heading in different directions to confuse the Valeth. Despite the setback, their efforts had not been in vain. Across the country, blind fighters began launching their own attacks using tactics inspired by Emily's group. Sighted allies joined the cause, creating diversions to draw enemy attention away from the main assault teams. Humanity, once paralyzed by fear, now fought back with renewed determination. Kevin continued documenting everything, sharing updates through underground networks. His reports reached millions, igniting a global movement. Protests erupted in cities worldwide, with people demanding freedom from the Valeth's control. Even some sympathetic sighted individuals volunteered to help, forming diversionary groups to support the resistance. Meanwhile, Emily and Jake focused on planning their next move. They knew the Valeth's central hub, a towering structure buried deep within the mountains, was still operational. Destroying it would sever the aliens' connection to Earth and cripple their psychic powers permanently. With Laura's help, they devised a daring plan. Using modified gadgets and improvised weapons, they prepared for one final mission. The stakes were higher than ever, but failure was not an option. As they gathered their gear and said their goodbyes, Emily felt a surge of resolve. "We've come this far," she told the group. "We're not stopping now." Under the cover of darkness, they set out for the mountains, ready to face whatever awaited them. The battle ahead would be dangerous, but they were prepared to risk everything for the chance to reclaim their world. Hope burned brightly in their hearts, fueling their determination to see the fight through to the end. The final mission was fraught with danger. Emily, Jake, Maria, Samuel, Lavara, and Kevin moved cautiously through the mountains, their breaths visible in the cold night air. The Valith central hub loomed ahead, a massive structure glowing faintly against the dark sky. It pulsed with energy, a reminder of the power they were about to challenge. Reaching the entrance, Emily signaled for silence. She listened intently, her heightened senses detecting the faint hum of alien activity. "Inside, we go in quiet," she whispered. "Stick to the plan." Lavra handed out the last of her gadget's devices designed to disrupt the Valith's perception. Each member of the group took a deep breath, steeling themselves for what lay ahead. They slipped inside, moving swiftly through dimly lit corridors. The air was thick with tension, every sound echoing ominously. They reached the core chamber without encountering resistance, but the sight before them was overwhelming. The room was dominated by a towering machine, its surface covered in pulsating green lights. At its center floated the Valith commander, larger and more menacing than any they had faced before. Its glowing eyes locked onto them instantly. "Now!" Emily shouted. Jake sprang into action, planting explosives around the chamber while Maria and Samuel activated their sound emitters and reflective shields. High-pitched screeches filled the air, disorienting the commander and forcing it to stagger back. Emily stepped forward, her cane sweeping the ground as she closed the distance. Her echolocation skills guided her movements, allowing her to dodge the creature's psychic blasts. With a fierce cry, she hurled a makeshift weapon, a shard of metal straight at the commander's weak point. The impact sent shockwaves through the chamber, and the creature let out an ear-splitting shriek before collapsing. "Get out!" Jake yelled, pulling Emily away from the chaos. The team retreated as fast as they could, the explosives ticking. Down. Behind them, the machine erupted in a blinding explosion, shaking the entire mountain. Debris rained down as they sprinted toward safety. When they finally emerged into the open air, they turned to see the central hub crumble into ruins. The green glow faded, replaced by darkness. For a moment, there was silence. Then slowly, the world began to change. People who had been under the Valith control blinked in confusion, their minds free at last. News of the victory spread quickly. Cities erupted in celebration, people cheering in the streets as the aliens holed over. Humanity shattered. The remaining Valith fled Earth, their powers useless without the central hub. Back in Pine Ridge, Emily reflected on everything they had achieved. Though scarred by loss and hardship, the Resistance had proven that true strength came not from physical abilities but from determination and unity. She became an advocate for inclusivity, urging society to recognize the value of diverse perspectives. Jake returned to his workshop, designing adaptive technologies to help both blind and sighted individuals. Lavra continued refining her inventions, earning recognition as a pioneer in defensive tech. Kevin published a book detailing the Resistance's story, ensuring it would never be forgotten. As the world rebuilt, hope prevailed. The blind humans who had once felt marginalized now stood as symbols of resilience and ingenuity. Their actions reminded humanity that even in the darkest times, courage and teamwork could light the way forward. And so life began anew, stronger and more united than ever before.